welcome to Nighthawk Racing and the hashtag F1RT Championship. Firstly, I'm Sarah Hawkey. You can find myself and the rest of our drivers here on the Nighthawk Racing YouTube channel. You can also check out the entire back catalogue of seasons 1 to 3 of the F1 RST series, mini-series and off-championship events, and one-off race events, all of which are highly competitive and a lot of fun. Also, please check out our Instagram and TikTok for other content and races there. Link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen for more information. But now, it's time to focus on the event at hand. Tonight is round 4 of season 4 and in today's video we'll be covering the red lobby here at Suzuka. Before we get into tonight's race, I'm just going to give you a little bit more information about the event itself and the championship as a whole. So as you can see on screen at the moment is our calendar. We have a 10 race championship calendar going to several different tracks that GT7 has to offer. The racing itself will be divided into 2 lobbies, the red and the blue lobby. There are 2 racing events with a qualifying session, and the order of the events is the qualifying session comes up first. This sets a grid for the feature race. Next up is the sprint race, which is based on reverse average points scored, and then we go straight into the feature race, and like I said earlier, the qualifying session sets the grid for the feature race. So, up first on the racing events of the night is the sprint race. The sprint race will be 12 laps. The grid is formed via how the drivers line up in reverse average points scored across the season for a rolling start. Next up we have the feature race at 46 laps. All drivers must use 2 different compounds of tyres in this race, whilst also starting on the grid on the compound that they set their fastest lap in qualifying earlier. And as a reminder, during the lobby tonight, in the blue lobby, drivers have full driver aids such as traction control, ASM and ABS. And in the red lobby, they only have ABS enabled on the driver aids. That hardcore driving experience to really challenge our drivers. Right, so while the drivers are getting to know Deep Forest, let's get to know Deep Forest as well and see if we can find a few facts about it. But Deep Forest Raceway is a fictional circuit that first appeared in the original Gran Turismo if you had the pleasure of playing it. It's also featured in most of the games since except GT Sport, but it has returned to GT7 with a slightly redesigned layout. It's 4.25 kilometers long, or just over 2.5 miles. And it is set in Switzerland. Obviously it's known for its kind of thickly woodened forest around the track with that back straight literally on the cliff edge, and like many original circuits it incorporates several tunnels due to the high speed nature of the track. Sports cars focusing on raw power are best suited for this course, so I think the NHR drivers will fit in right at home. But it features undulating corners, tight banked corners and long sweeping turns. It's a medium to high speed course, this one, and it is a favourite among GT players, not just for its scenery but for its deceptive difficulty to drive quickly. And obviously this is the first of two. We're back at Deep Forest next week for the reverse layout, so let's see how the drivers got on. But before I hand you back over to the drivers to see how they got on in the sprint race, in the Gran Turismo, the track, like I say, was given a extreme redesign with more barriers being added around the racetrack within the forested road. The most significant change is the addition of a much longer straight from the tunnel section leading into a sharp downhill hairpin turn, which does catch quite a few drivers out. But let's go see how the drivers got on in qualifying and get into the sprint race.
Okay, so here is the sprint grid order for Season 4, Round 5 at Deep Forest. So leading us away on the rolling start will be Sitterly in P1 in that Lexus RCF. In second place we will have Charlie in that Ford GT, which you can see from space with those colours. In P3 we have Phil, T50 Phil himself in that GTR. And in fourth place we have KD the Kai in the other GTR. And Kai himself is our Series 3 champion, and he's always one to watch, especially on the sprint grids. And in fifth we have Sophie in that Ferrari 458, which is going to be an incredibly fast run here, I've no doubt, and another one to watch. Sarah, can you do the next six, please?
Of course I can. In P6 we have the People's Champion, the other half of Nighthawk Racing Midnight ISO in that McLaren 650S. In P7 we then have Mercedes in that Porsche 911, the Team Year 1 livery, which again is very bright, so looking forward to seeing it out on track. In P8 we then have Wise Fodderboy in the Porsche 911, and he had a really good result last week in the Blue Lobby, so excited to see how he gets on. And just behind in P9 we have Pedro in that BMW M6, looking for another good haul of points again tonight. In P10 we have the Dark Lord GT in that Toyota Supra, and then in P11, and he's back on the grid, we have our very own McManley in that Ferrari 458.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Well, that means we are set for our sprint race here at Deep Forest. There's going to be a lot going on in this sprint race. I feel there's going to be a lot of drivers from the back wanting to make their way through. We've got a couple of new additions, like Wise Fatherboy and Phil, both in the second race for Nighthawk Racing, wanting to make a impression with their first race in the Red Lobby. But anyone that you're going to be keeping an eye on in particular?
Well, you bring up a very good point there. Obviously, Wise Fodderboy and Phil, being promoted from the Blue Lobby. It's exciting to see that on their second Nighthawk event. So excited to see how they get on with kind of our resident Red Lobby drivers at the moment. And also, McManley back driving a slightly different car. We know him for driving that Mercedes AMG, but he's opted for something different for his first race back. So it might be a little bit of kind of data gathering for McManley for future seasons. I know he's been quite dedicated to schoolwork and stuff, so it's good to see him back on the grid, and hoping that he has a good race. Apart from that, I mean, we've got to keep our eyes on the Dark Lord GT. He's on form recently, working his way through the grid. So I'm excited to see that again. He always, provides us with a lot of entertainment, shall we say.
Yeah, quite agree as well. And I think one driver who's going to be after a good result here will be Pedro, who always, I'm not going to say struggles in the sprint races, but is going to have to challenge himself to pick up a good result, because it's going to get to the sharp end of the championship, and I know he's going to be fighting for some good positions. But looking at that grid, I mean, we've got drivers we haven't even mentioned, like Mercedes, who is rapid as well. So, well, I'm going to just say, let's just get on with it, see what happens, and see which driver performs the best today.
Yeah, let's get deep into that forest.
I see what you did there.
Okay, so leading us away tonight for our round 5 Red Lobby sprint race, we have Sitterly, followed by Charlie, followed by newly promoted Phil in P3. And here we are, away we go, as Sitterly leads us away as they run up this little crest before the braking zone into the first corner. It looks like everybody's keeping it single file far as we see Charlie going deep and wide onto the grass, which is obviously not the way he wanted to start this race, which has dropped him from second all the way down to the back of the pack. However, it allows Sitley to get a little bit of breathing room up as we head into the second sector of this lap. Also, newly promoted Phil is now up into second place. It looks like he's closing that quite quickly up to Sitley, but it looks like he is feeling the pressure from the other GTR behind him with Katie Dekai. Looking down the grid, everybody's still keeping it all nice and single file without keeping it nice and respectable as they head up onto the back straight. Nobody diving into that little left hand, should I say, as they run onto the back straight. We're going to see it. Do you think we're going to see it move into the hairpin, Sarah?
We might do, but everyone kind of relatively in single line coming up to the hairpin, so it's going to be the game of who breaks later as we see Katie Dekai and Phil, the two GTRs, going side by side. Will Katie Dekai be able to get the inside line? He does, and it looks like he's going to make a move for the lead here on City as well, as City went a little bit wide, rejoined just behind Sophie. But actually loses quite a few positions. It goes from the lead to P6, so unfortunate for City there. But she promoted Sophie up to P3, potentially maybe looking for a move on Phil here, Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like City maybe got caught out by how late Kai and Phil broke into the hairpin and maybe had to take some avoiding actions. That's a car off in the background. Who is it? It looks like Fodder's been put round, going to a half spin. McManley collects him to knock him into a full spin. We have Dark Lord possibly waiting up, and I'm not sure, and I think it might have been Sitley who ran wide and onto the grass, Sarah.
Yeah, it looked like a bit of a complicated incident between quite a few drivers of Citadel, the Dark Lord, Fodder and Mac. So unfortunate for these guys, but it is the sprint race, so it's all to play for. I'm sure they can try and get up. As we see Phil facing the wrong way, losing quite a few positions there. Maybe a potential mistake or an incident that we may have missed. As we're very lucky that he ghosted there. Otherwise, Dark Lord would have got a surprise GTR in the face.
I think what happened there with Phil is that he dropped it on the exit of turn 6 as he come out of the tunnel and just looped it basically and picked up heavy damage on the front of his GTR. Which unfortunately, with it only being light damage for the sprint race, it should hopefully dissipate sooner rather than later. But from the start of this race, our top 3 is completely mixed round as we got Katie Kai leading us on the end of lap 2, followed by Sophie, in second, and Midnight ISO in third place, who's being hounded at the minute by Mercedes and the Porsche.
I was going to say, Mercedes very close. He goes to the outside here, Midnight onto the inside. A little kind of move from Mercedes there, but Midnight looks like he's secured that apex and promotes himself up into P3 again. Obviously, Mercedes will try and fight for this, but the twisty-turny bit is so hard to go side by side in. But just looking further behind, I was going to mention about Charlie, climbing his way back up to P7 as he was involved in that first Turn 1 incident. So good to see him making up a few positions. And we haven't talked about him much yet, but the return of the Mac Manley in that Ferrari 458 seemed to be doing quite well in P6 currently, Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he got caught up on that lap 2 incident with Dark Lord, Fodder and all that, which cost him a bit of time, but he's certainly doing quite well on his return to the series. And I also want to say Pedro doing quite well up in P5 at the minute, being able to avoid pretty much all of the incidents and driving quite well at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure Pedro's had front row seats in some of those incidents and probably closed his eyes through some of them, trying to avoid them. But yeah, the BMW getting very, very happy at coming out of that hairpin. But yeah, like you said, doing quite well so far. And it looks like Fodder and the Dark Lord were going to attempt to go it, but still their position's still where they are. I was just having a look as well. Charlie, that speed of that 4GT looks like he's catching McManley by a rate of knots here on this start-finish straight, but it doesn't look like it's enough to go and pass Mac here. But that battle for P3 seems to be heating up, Kirk, between Pedro, Mercedes and Midnight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Midnight is trying to make that the widest McLaren in the world at the moment. He certainly seems to be doing quite well at the moment. He's certainly handling the pressure, but I'm not fully sure if he'll be able to handle it for the remaining 8 laps. It'll have to be a very stellar defensive drive. And don't forget second place of Sophie as well. If she makes a slight mistake or anything anywhere, the 3 cars behind her will certainly be looking at trying to take advantage of it.
Yeah, they will definitely pounce. That's all I can say. But yeah, Sophie doing a remarkable job so far, managing to hold these 3 behind, and Midnight obviously having the double task of looking in front and behind at the moment. He's got pressure from behind in Mercedes. It looks like he's going to stay there for now. I thought he might potentially go for a move there, a very curious move, shall we say, if you've seen the blue lobby. But yeah, it looks like Mercedes might be obviously in the slipstream of Midnight. He might be able to make a move this lap, or he might just stay behind Midnight until obviously Sophie or Midnight makes a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it looks like Mercedes is certainly closing on Midnight at the moment, but thought better making a move into the first corner.
Yeah, it seems like Pedro's lost a tiny bit of time to the 2 in front. Maybe just taking a little bit of a step back, let those 2 battle it out, and then try and obviously claim those positions if they make a mistake. As it looks like Mercedes, was struggling with the rear end of that Porsche through this twisty turny bit under the tunnels as well. And I've got to say, obviously, this is probably one of the hardest sections, especially for this BMW as well. As you can see, a little wobble by Pedro there. But yeah, all in all, seems to be kind of settling down between a few of the drivers. We've still got the Dark Lord behind Fodder, looking for a pass. But and McManley picking up a half-second penalty.
Yeah, it's going to put him under pressure from Charlie behind. Obviously, Charlie, before that first lap incident where he outbroke himself slightly into turn 1, looks like he could possibly be back up to P6. As we look at up front, Pedro thinking better about a move on Mercedes into the hairpin. But going back to what you're saying, how difficult the middle sector would be for the BMW, I think you're quite right. Obviously, compared to the 3 cars in front of him, which are all mid-engined, obviously they will get much better rotation during the mid-speed corners compared to the BMW, where the engine's in the front of the driver, in front of the driver. So it obviously understeers a bit more than oversteers.
Yeah, you're completely right there. Looks like obviously Pedro in this kind of first into second sector loses a bit of time, but then he kind of manages to gain back a little bit of time on the straights because of the BMW is quite fast, but it's not as fast as say the Ford GT, which Charlie has managed to get into P6 with McManley behind now because of that penalty. But I'm sure McManley will be looking to try and get ahead of Charlie as soon as he can and reclaim that P6, as it looked like the 2 came together a little bit there. A little bit of rubbing is racing, as we say. But yeah, anything that's caught your eye so far, Kirk?
Yeah, it looks like
Sophie. She's picked up a half-second penalty. This could drop her back behind this pack of 3.
That's what we were saying earlier on in the race. Even a slight mistake can be punished so cruelly. If she made a mistake to the 3 cars that are so close by her, and she loses her position to Midnight ISO, and it looks like she may be come across quite aggressively there on Mercedes. Obviously, catching Mercedes off guard ever so slightly, which caused him to give a slight tap up the rear.
I think very lucky if Mercedes doesn't have damage. That was very lucky. Yeah, and he doesn't have any damage at all. Very, very lucky indeed by Mercedes there. Because you rightly called it, obviously, I think Mercedes thought that Sophie was going to stay over to that left-hand side, but she didn't. She capped him off and tried to prevent him from going back past, as it looked like Sophie was going to try and make a move on Midnight here, but Midnight being able to stay in front. Although Sophie is trying to force Midnight into mistake here, so potentially we may see another pass for the podium.
She picked up another half-second penalty there, Sarah, in that first sector, which will almost certainly drop her behind both Mercedes and Pedro.
Yeah, obviously I think Pedro will probably, this time round, after that penalty zone, will think, potentially maybe Sophie might cut in front of him again. So, yeah, I'm sure Pedro will be very careful shortly, as we all know we don't like to make mistakes and obviously drop too many positions, so I can understand why Sophie did cut in quite aggressively, but like you say, it probably did catch Mercedes out by a little bit of surprise. Let's see if anything happens again, as we see Sophie trying to cut Mercedes off, but I think she knows she doesn't have the gap this time, as Pedro's side by side with it, going through the hairpin. Sophie on the inside line, Pedro on the outside line. Pedro obviously not being able to get past Sophie there. Maybe the speed of that 458 kind of had, advantage was in Sophie's court there, as Pedro loses a bit of time to Mercedes because of that.
But all this, all these penalty shenanigans and they're battling is like midnight to break away ever so slightly in front of this little battle of three that is now behind him. As Sophie sends a very bit of a late lunge there up the inside of Mercedes. Mercedes doing very well to avoid what could be a very audacious move there from Sophie, and managing to hold P3 at that final podium position for the moment.
That was a bit of a scary moment, I think, for both of them. I think Sophie thinking, "Can I brake in time? Can I make the move done?" And Mercedes probably, screaming with his eyes shut there because maybe he thought that Sophie was going to take him out of the race. But they all make it through, thank God. Obviously, Mercedes still on the podium at the minute with Sophie close behind, and then followed by Pedro. Looking further behind, not too far behind now, we have Charlie and Mac still fighting it out. And Dark Lord somewhere has managed to make that move on fodder, and I'm sure he'll be trying to catch this group again.
Well, if anybody's got the pace now and clear air to catch any driver he wants, essentially, it would be the Dark Lord. As Manley looks about pulling out on the 4GT, but not quite being close enough to make the move there into the hairpin. Oh, is he getting all sorts of sideways on the exit there? So I want to say halfway around that previous lap in the second sector, it looked like Pedro picked up a half-second penalty, which has dropped him off the back of Sophie and Mercedes. But I'm sure if he puts his head down and legs battle in front of him, he'll be able to catch him up before the end of this race. I just got to say, the speed, or the top speed of that 4GT seems a little bit outrageous around here, so Sarah.
Yeah, it does. It seems unbelievably fast. Although he probably Mac probably doesn't want to get caught behind the 4GT, because obviously we know how fast that is on top end speed as well here. So kind of equally paced at the minute is Mac and Charlie, but it all makes our job a lot more fun. Kind of commentating on these battles between two of the most high speed cars on the game at the moment. But I was just looking on board with Pedro. Well, it looks like Sophie's picked up another half-second penalty, so maybe that might bring Pedro back into the game a little bit here. Because I was going to mention he's in a bit of no man's land at the moment between the battle, obviously, for P3 and Charlie and Mac, who's ever so closely approaching him. But as well, as you mentioned, Dark Lord not too far behind. He's using that clean air to get. Oh, I thought, is he going to make a move on Mac? No, he's not. He brakes. Manages not to take Mac out, but I thought, maybe Dark Lord make an aggressive move there, but he waits for another lap.
Well, we all know how fast that Supra is in a straight line. I don't think he might not be close enough, although it looks like he is now starting to visibly gain quite quickly on that Ferrari. It looks like he got to overspeed about 5 or 6 mile an hour as he pulls out to the inside. Can't brake as late as he wants to, and Mac holds the position for the moment. But with the speed of that Supra, you got to think surely it's only got to be a matter of time really before he makes that overtake for P7.
Yeah, obviously, both me and you in the blue lobby, I think we can both agree how fast the Supra was in there as well. So I'm sure Mac will be kind of looking behind, seeing the Dark Lord approaching, the rear of that Ferrari, faster and faster and closer the more the laps go round. But having a quick look up to the front, Midnight still holding that P2, but I don't know about you, we've not mentioned him much, but Cady, the guy having a sprint race of his life at the moment, he's just chilling.
Yeah, it's been a very good sprint race for Cady Kai. Maybe he's got on top of what we saw were maybe not negatives, but
a few mistakes here and there.
Yeah, we know from previous races he'd make a few mistakes here and there, but he certainly drove a faultless sprint race here today, and he's doing very well at this moment. Got a very healthy gap to the cars behind, running about consistent half a second to a second faster, so it's been pretty much perfect for him.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be kind of appreciating it. Not an easy race by any means, but a bit more kind of, he's got a bit of space to breathe, especially in this sprint race, because obviously we know the feature race can be a completely different story for some of these cars and drivers. So good to see him doing well in the sprint so far, and he has got the fastest lap, so obviously an extra point for him there as well. as we see that the podium is still the same. Midnight in P2, Mercedes P3. Oh, and Sophie, a bit of contact with the wall there. She didn't pick up any damage, which was very lucky because it did look like quite a hefty whack to the wall there. But that does bring Pedro a little bit closer to Sophie here. And yeah, obviously still further behind. We've still got Charlie, then Mac, then the Dark Lord. Fodder having a little bit more of a kind of a difficult sprint race here than last week. As we saw, he was doing quite well in the blue lobby in that Porsche. But, you know, it's his first introduction to the red lobby. So hopefully we'll see, you know, a form of... his form, you know, kind of boost up a little bit for the feature race as well. As Phil, he's managed to make a move on Citily, or maybe a potential mistake from Citily that we didn't spot. But, you know, everyone doing quite a good job so far. Because it's not an easy track, to say the least, is it, Kirk?
No, it certainly is not. You know, it's very easy to maybe get a little bit too early and spin the rears, like we've seen quite a few people do out the hairpin. You know, I mean, if you're not careful on that throttle, especially as the tyres start to wear out, you know, it's a track will certainly bite you hard because you ain't got to go too far before you touch grass. It looks like Dark Claw is trying to go around the outside of McMahon, the corner. There's a slight little bit of rubbing there, but McMahon holds the position heading on to the final lap, Sarah. I'm sure the Dark Lord is going to be all over that Ferrari. I'm sure he'll be desperate to take any points he can in this sprint race. And going back to...
Noticed, sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you noticed there quickly. Mac broke the slipstream of the Dark Lord there. So very clever racing by Mac. He broke the slipstream and managed to cap that apex off. Sorry, go back to what you were saying. I think we've spotted the same thing, but you go ahead for it, Coke.
No, I was going to say, at the back there was Citily and Phil. It looked like Citily on the previous lap picked up a half-second penalty, or which cost him position to Phil. But going back towards the battle for P5, it was like it might be a drag race between Charlie and Pedro towards the line, as that 4GT is all over the back of that BMW. Charlie looks towards the inside, thinks better of it. If he can just straighten it up nice and early, without too much wheel spin, which I think that'll be an okay exit. It looks like McMahon spins behind. Now going back towards with Charlie and Pedro, is Charlie gonna be able to do it? He tucks in behind that BMW, and I think it's just gonna run out of time before the finish and before the finish line, and Pedro takes P5.
What a final lap that was!
It was like full of handbrakes over the line as well. Unfortunate for Matt there to lose it on the final corner. It cost him P6 in the end. Well, P7 shall I say in the end. But it also promotes Louis or the Dark Lord up into P7. So I'm sure he'll be secretly smiling about that.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Obviously, Mac will probably be slightly, you know, upset about that. But obviously, on the other half, Dark Lord having a little bit of a smirk on his face. But we'll run through the grid as well, obviously, because we didn't quite manage to do that, because that last lap was kind of a bit intense. But coming over the line in first place, we have Katie Dekai, then followed by Midnight. So Midnight was able to hold that P2, as well as Mercedes in P3. We then had Sophie in that Ferrari P4. Pedro managing to hold Charlie, like you said, for that P5 position. He did quite well. It looked like he made a potential mistake, because in that last lap especially, Charlie was right on the back of that BMW. But if you want to run through the rest of the grid for me, Kirk.
Yeah, so I was going to say Charlie in P6, Dark Lord taking advantage of that mistake from McMahon to finish 7th. Although knowing the Dark Lord, he probably was not the happiest with P7 in the sprint race. I'm sure he'd want to be up there with the likes of Kai in Midnight. Fodder in P8, we saw it get into an incident on the second lap, the first corner with Dark Lord and McMahon. But I'm sure we'll expect bigger things from the sprint race from Fodder. And then P9, obviously, unfortunately for Mac, we saw him spin on the final proper corner of this race. Unfortunate to lose P7 in the end to Dark Lord and Fodder. It looks like in P10 we'll have Phil. Again, probably not a great race from him. Obviously, we saw what he could do out of Suzuka last time out, but I'm sure he'll do better things to come in the feature race. And then last but certainly not least, we have a Citily in the Lexus Yeah, I'm pretty sure without that penalty he unfortunately picked up, he would be able to take Phil all the way for the P10 position, Sarah.
Yeah, it did look quite close across the field. Obviously, a few incidents did bring a few people kind of a little bit closer than what they probably expected. Like obviously, Fodder, Dark Lord. We know that they are fast, but obviously, incidents kind of halted their performances around here. But hopefully, like you say, they'll have some better luck in the feature race, especially. But not probably the way that Mac wanted to make his return to GT7. But like I say, we've got the feature race next. Hopefully, he'll be able to qualify well and really kind of test out that Ferrari, because we normally see him in the Mercedes, and he's chosen the Ferrari purely because he wants to test for future seasons. So I think the feature race will definitely, help Mac make up his mind if he wants to drive that car again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know about you, Kirk. Let's go see where everyone qualified for the feature race, and then jump into the feature race itself.
Yeah, I can't wait. Let's bring it on.
So here are the qualifying results from Deep Forest, and this also sets us up for the feature race grid as well. And in pole position we have Wise Fodderboy with a 1:25.805, unbelievably fast by Wise Fodderboy there, and he set that time on softs, just starting just behind, and only very marginally behind is Midnight in that Mclaren, setting a 1:25.844, also setting that time on the softs. Mercedes just behind in P3 with a 1:25.9 flat. He also set that time on the soft, so you can see a theme here for the top three so far with these fast times. And in P4 we have the Dark Lord. He set his time on the medium tyres, so it just shows you how fast he really is. He set a time of a 1:25.985. And then just behind we have KD the Kai with a 1:26.188, setting the time on mediums as well. And before I hand over to Midnight, who ran through the rest of the grid, I'm just going to mention P6 with T50 Phil, setting the time on some soft set of tyres with a 1:26.203. So all very close, but I'm going to hand over to Midnight, who ran through the rest of the grid for me.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So in 7th we have Sophie in that 458 on a 1:26.409. Only a couple of tenths shy of 6th place, but again keeping the field quite nice and tight there. And Pedro right behind, less than a tenth in P8 on a 1:26.490. Moving into 9th place we have Charlie on a 1:26.507 in that Ford GT. And rejoining the grid for his first feature race this season, McManley on a 1:27.403 in the 458 this time, and qualifying on those mediums. So he's got more to give on that, and he will find more speed as the race goes on. And Sicily in 11th today in that Lexus RCF on a 1:29.985. So Sarah, I think the grid, particularly in the top 7, is incredibly close. Sorry, top 9, only split by 7 tenths a second. So that could have gone anyway in qualifying, couldn't it?
Yeah, good fact there from yourself. I didn't realise how close it was until we really had a look at it, and it just goes to show how fast the drivers are, how close their performances are. But as you rightly said, it could have been anyone's game here today in the qualifying. It could all be opposite ways. We could have had people qualifying a lot higher up, but yeah, I'm excited to see how they all get on, and if they can kind of convert that qualifying pace into the race pace, especially obviously Pedro starting in P8, he'll be looking to get further up the grid and get some good points, and yeah, we've got some good runners. I'm excited to see how Wise Fodderboy does, starting in pole with Midnight, Mercedes and the Dark Lord right behind. Not the sort of people you want behind you, but yeah, I'm sure he'll do well.
Well, I'm just going to say this is going to set us up for what could be a fantastic feature race here in the red lobby. Lots of mods to keep your eye on, and I don't think anyone in there is not going to be capable of at least a podium finish. in testing. There's a few cars that have shown themselves to be great on a longer run. I'm not going to say which, but I'm sure we'll find out in the next couple of minutes. So I think it's time to hand over to that commentary team and see how the feature race goes on in the red lobby, Sarah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so you join us tonight for the feature race, round 5, Deep Forest Regulator at the 5 red lights, and out and away they go. And it looks like a poor start there from Fodder, Midnight, and Mercedes jumps him off the line, and Kai, and Mac, and possibly Phil as well. It drops from 1st to 7th, but they go 3 wide into the first corner. It looks like a little bit of argy-bargy between a few drivers, but the big winner on the open, or from the start here, is Dark Lord up into 1st place. We currently have Mac and Katie Kai going side by side, going into the 3rd and 4th corner. It looks like Katie Kai has the preferred inside line, which allows him to get ahead of the Ferrari driver of Mac. Mac runs ever so slightly wide and run into the tunnel, which allows Midnight to also sneak up his inside, as well as Mercedes. As Mercedes and Mac are still going side by side. Mac randomly getting ever so sideways there. However, Mercedes carries the momentum around the outside and makes that move stick. Sarah, there's certainly been a lot of action on this first lap. We've seen big winners such as Dark Lord, Kai, and obviously Fodder not doing so well after starting on pole, Sarah.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Another big winner, well, initial big winner, was Mac as well. He went from 10th to up to 2nd place within a few corners, so he got a lightning start on that 458. But unfortunately, like you say, he lost place to Midnight and Mercedes during that kind of under the tunnel section, and maybe I thought he might lose a place to Fodder there, but Fodder lets Mac have that line coming out of the hairpin. But yeah, unfortunate start for some. But I couldn't really, didn't know where to look. We were going 4 wide into the first corner, so it was basically action from the get-go. But we are on to lap number 2. Sophie has picked up a half-second penalty, but she is tucked in behind Charlie, but gives Charlie a little bit of a push, and McManley's also off of the tracks.
Yeah, at the front, Sarah, Fodder went for a bit of a audacious lunge on McManley, tapping McManley wide. It was just like, and costing Mac a few positions. And at the back, obviously, we saw it kick off as well at the back between Sophie and Charlie, was it?
I believe so, yeah. Sophie giving a little tap to Charlie. But it's good that Fodder waited for McManley. Good sportsmanship there from Fodder.
Back at the front of our pack with Dark Lord and Kai. Obviously, we saw them off the start. Both managed to jump all 3 of the softwares in front of them with Mercedes, Midnight, and Fodder. But so now you got to play the waiting game, surely, where Midnight's softs to wear out before they start breaking away out front. As it looks like Mercedes getting an excellent cutback there on Midnight ISO, with the power of the McLaren, or the better exit, allows him to stay ahead of the Porsche driver for now. This is, as Mercedes gets back up behind that McLaren. Are they going to try and make a move around the outside into turn 1? That will certainly be a brave one to do, as he thinks better of it as Midnight manages to outbrake the Porsche into the first corner, Sarah.
Looks like Mercedes may have potentially gone for a move there, but thought better of it. Chooses life for this first couple of corners of the 3rd lap. But yeah, it's good to see these battling. Obviously, these 2 battling so early on in the race. The previous races we've had in the season so far, it always seems that Mercedes and Midnight are always fighting. So it's good to see them, fighting yet again. And we'll see who comes out on top at the end of the race. But Phil doing a pretty good job. Obviously, in P5 currently just kind of tucked up behind the pack of 4 in the lead. But yeah, I mean, obviously Katie the Kai and the Dark Lord probably one of 2 of our fastest drivers that we've got here. So it's interesting to see how the lead between these 2 is going to kind of carry out along the race. But I don't know about you, but Katie the Kai is probably taking advantage of being behind the Dark Lord for now, maybe saving some fuel. And obviously maybe saving a little bit of tyre wear. So yeah, good to see Katie the Kai thinking about strategy here potentially. But he might make a move into turn 1, we never know. But just behind, we've still got Mercedes tucked up behind Midnight. again, maybe potentially thinking about fuel and tyre wear. If you can just save just that a little bit more, he could go a lap more and overcut Midnight potentially.
Possibly. It's also interesting enough that they're both, obviously we know Key the Kite and the Dark Lord are both on the medium tyre. They've already managed to break away from the two soft runners behind them, which is what they want to do. They really don't want to give the soft runners any advantage, such as being in the slipstream or to save fuel or anything. The fact that they've managed to break away and get their own little space on track really gives advantage to them for the early part of this race.
Definitely does, and yeah, obviously we've got a little bit of a gap between, like you say, the top 4 and P5 and Phil, and we've got a little group kind of here with Phil, Pedro just behind, and just behind Pedro we've got Fodder. So Fodder overtaking McManley again, this time being tucked up behind Pedro, so Fodder back on the move. And McManley just in P8 at the minute, trying to kind of recoup after that first lap incident. We have Fodder going for a very late move on Pedro there, manages to get the car stopped surprisingly, and makes that move done. I'm very surprised Fodder actually managed to get that Porsche to stay on track, because once you break late into that hairpin, sometimes let's just say you just get sent to Narnia.
And he managed to get the power down on exit absolutely beautifully to be able to power around the outside of the BMW who took the tighter line into the hairpin. Oh, it looks like Fodder takes a very unusual line into the first corner, allows him to brake late and deep into the corner and straighten up the exit to get the power on. And currently hunting down Phil at the moment. Both drivers on the soft tyres.
Like I say, obviously they'll be having to look after those soft tyres now. Obviously 5 laps in, we know that the soft tyres don't last that long around this track, so they'll be looking after them as best as they can. Briefly, we had a little bit of a battle between Citily and Sophie. Sophie picking up a half-second penalty, so that is looking good for maybe Citily inheriting that P9. We've got Charlie still on P11, still going after that little tap from Sophie, so good to see that he's still running. If we go back up to the top, we've got Fodder now chasing Phil, so potentially maybe a late braking move here again by Fodder, we shall see. Thinks better of it this time, gets it stopped nice and early, potentially looking for a move after the hairpin if you can get that power down nice and early again, but or get that slipstream and lunge into turn 1, which seems to be the driver's favourite move. But anything that's caught your eye or you're watching, Kirk?
No, I'm just I'm looking at the current battle between Dark Lord and Cade Cow. It's like Cade Cow may have tapped the Dark Lord ever so slightly, but at the moment it looks like still slight advantage of the soft tyres. His Midnight ISO has been running ever so slightly quicker than the first and second place drivers by about 10th and a half, 2 tenths. It looks like he might just about back within slipstream range, which will help him save a bit of fuel. It looks like Fodder did make it past Phil into the first corner, Sarah.
He did. He managed to pull that move on the outside of turn 1, so a very brave move by Fodder there, and obviously not a pass that you see very often around that corner, but manages to get it done. And yeah, has already got his eyes set on trying to chase Mercedes in the fellow 911, but it seems to have lost a little bit of time to Midnight, like you say. We've still got that top 2 very kind of glued together at the moment, and I'm sure Midnight will be eager to try and get himself glued to the bumper of KD the Kai's GTR as well to save a little bit of fuel and tyre this early into the race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a near perfect start for Dark Lord and KD the Kai. Obviously they've got Dark Lord's got clear track, so he can push hard. And he ain't got to worry about any soft runners in front of him whose tyres, as you said, may be starting to wear off now. So their pace is starting to drop off. The mediums can keep running at a consistent mid-26, which they are both doing at the moment.
Seems that Pedro is making some inlays on Phil. He's getting ever so closer to that rear of that GTR. Pedro obviously in the BMW, the BMW not kind of suited to this track with the twisty turny sections. It's very... Oh, Phil makes a mistake in the tunnel, which looks like Pedro's going to inherit that P6. Unfortunate for Phil. I think he just managed to scrape away without any damage there, so very lucky from Phil there. But shouldn't lose him too much time, although we've got McManley on the move, looking to try and get that P7 from Phil, make up a few moves, again, obviously from that incident at the start. But yeah, very unfortunate, but it just goes to show even one little incident obviously affects and drops you a few positions, because the grid is just that close together at the minute.
Especially early on in this race, as you said, as they're all packed together, even the slightest mistake could see you drop 2 or 3 positions, and then you've got to do that work all over again to try and catch up again.
Talking about catching up, it seems that Katie the Kai and the Dark Lord have broken away a little bit from Midnight and Mercedes. So again, they're just enjoying, being on the track and having a little bit of a gap to Midnight, who looked like he was nearly glued to the bumper, but they may have found an extra gear or maybe some rocket fuel, and Midnight didn't. But yeah, it looks like these two pretty much glued together at the minute. I think obviously this will be a battle that is going to enjoy, the whole of the race. So I'll have to keep an eye on this, as it doesn't look like Katie the Kai's kind of willing. He doesn't really want to risk making a move on Dark Lord right now. Maybe he'll kind of try and play into his strategy a little bit more. As obviously, what would you do in this situation, Kirk? Would you try and challenge for a move, or would you just kind of tuck in behind and enjoy the saving of the fuel and tyres?
Was Katie Kai. I was about to say Katie Kai went very wide on the exit, on the exit onto the back straight, and picks up a half-second penalty. Now, if I'm Katie Kai, I want to be trying to make this overtake now and try and get a little bit of a buffer before I'm forced to serve this penalty. But yeah, before Katie Kai picked this penalty up, I'd probably be doing what he has been doing and just sit behind, save a little bit of fuel, because the more fuel you save, the less fuel you have to take during a pit stop. And it saves quite a bit of time the more you save. We see the first of our soft runners to pit being Mercedes. Maybe a little bit early for a pit stop. I know, I think the optimum strategy, well, the generic strategy would be 8 or 9 laps on the softs, and then do 18 laps on the mediums. But yeah, so it looks like Mercedes possibly going for a little bit of an undercut on the drivers around him on the other soft runners of Fodder and Midnight ISO.
Yeah, trying something slightly different, like you say, maybe finding a little bit of a gap, trying to see if the undercut will work. Obviously we'll keep an eye on Midnight and the other soft runners to see if they make a similar call. It looked like Katie Kai was about to make a move, but then thought better of it because of that half-second penalty. Unless obviously he just tried to avoid someone on the track that looked like a big swerve. But obviously he'll burn that penalty now, which will kind of release Dark Lord just that little bit. But I'm sure Katie the Kai were able to kind of close that gap again shortly. Yeah. As we join Midnight. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was looking down the back, towards the battle for P6 between Phil and McManley. It looks like McManley in the Ferrari trying to get up the inside of Phil. Phil closing that door at him. McManley kind of says, "There's still a gap there. I'm still going for it," and he goes up the inside of Phil up into the hairpin. As we see our second soft runner to pit being Midnight ISO, as well as Phil, which leads our oldest soft runner being Fodder, up in P3 now. It'll be interesting to see where Mercedes comes out compared to Midnight and Phil, to see if that undercut really paid off for him.
During Mercedes, he's just coming around the final corner now, so he may have undercut the other soft runners in Midnight and Phil. It might be close between Midnight, but it looks like Mercedes just about got that done, and Midnight's coming out of the pits now, so Mercedes about a corner ahead, so Midnight will have to do a little bit of chasing here, but it looks like the undercut might be quite strong around this track, Kirk.
Well, I was just looking at Mercedes fuel, and they only took about 90%, I want to say, because they're already down to just about a quarter tank after. Well, maybe they only took just over a quarter tank, as they have only got a quarter tank left at the moment. So maybe they underfueled a little bit for this stint to try and save, but make the time up.
Actually, thinking about obviously being a little bit time efficient, if they can save a little bit of time in the next pit stop by taking on a little bit less fuel, then obviously every little helps, as they say. But we shall see obviously what his strategy is later on in the race. Obviously on to lap number 10. Looks like a little bit of a battle brewing with McManley and Pedro here. I've got to admit that a Ferrari, when it gets going, it really does get going. It's quite fast, obviously, on the starts, as we saw, but McManley just getting a little bit unlucky and getting a little bit tangled with fodder. But it looks like he's ready to engage in that battle with Pedro now, Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, for the minute, it looks like Max going to have to stay behind Pedro for the moment, because obviously this isn't really a sector. No, it's easy to make an overtake in unless you really catch your opponent, well, the person in front or that you're overtaking, trying to overtake, napping. But I'm certainly thinking that he's going to learn his pitch straight, well, the back straight down towards the hairpin, that he'll more than likely go for a move on the Portuguese driver. With your spot, Sarah?
I thought McManley maybe touching the wall a little bit there, obviously picking up no damage, but maybe a little bit of time lost there by McManley. It looks like he just sideswiped the wall ever so slightly, which maybe lost him that just enough time for Pedro to pull a little bit away in preparation for this hairpin here, but we shall see. They break in. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that kind of little side swipe to the wall did cost McManley a potential pass there, but obviously we go again. We've gotten him back on the final corner, and obviously Mac will have to try and make that move done this lap, as we see Fodder coming in now with those soft tyres, managing to take them 11 laps, which is obviously quite the distance on that Porsche. And as you can see by the wear, obviously about a quarter left, so maybe potentially another lap in it, but as you can see the undercut is strong, so Fodder, seeing what his other kind of soft competitors did, and has decided to go onto a different compounded tyre now.
It'll be interesting to see where he comes out to the likes of Midnight and that. Mercedes obviously pulls off the undercut, but again, Fodder only took about just under a quarter tank of fuel, so obviously they're thinking that maybe a lighter car is the way to go around here and not a full tank.
Potentially not.
I did have a little insider bird tell me that most people in this race are going for a free stop, or that is the rumour, Sarah.
Yes, I heard that little rumour as well, potentially. We shall see if anyone goes for that free stop, but maybe potentially, like you say, Mercedes and Ford are going for the slightly less fuel. They're thinking of going for a free stopper, and obviously the fuel is the reason why. Potentially, obviously, if they don't have, like I said earlier, if they don't have to carry, too much fuel, then they won't. So we'll be excited to see how that free stop strategy works. If it's fast, I'm sure that obviously some of the other drivers might change their strategy up a little bit and go for that free stopper as well. And obviously quite a few drivers like to go for the soft tyres towards the end, go challenge for that fastest lap. So we may see, people diving in at the end trying to steal the fastest lap off of each other.
I just want to also, going back towards this little lead battle we got, between Dark Lord and Katie the Kai. Just recently, Katie the Kai has actually been quicker than the Dark Lord over the past two or three laps, being about 3/10 quicker than the Supra in the last two laps. So that's part 6.5 tenths over the past few laps. So almost back in slipstream range of the Supra. That's Katie the Kai, that is.
Mention that obviously after that penalty we did see Katie the Kai drop back quite a lot, but it was a good spot by you. Over that last lap or so, he's really been able to kind of close the gap. Obviously he's got a little bit more of a challenge on his hands to kind of get glued to that Supra again, as we all know how fast the Supra is around this track, especially on the start-finish straight. So potentially maybe the ball in the Dark Lord's court at the moment, but like you say, Katie the Kai going slightly fast at the minute. Maybe he'll be able to catch him in this twisty-turny first sector. As we see Italy having a little bit of a battle with Fodder now. those two getting close after Fodder coming into the pits a few laps ago, and we still have that battle with McManley and Pedro going on currently for that P3 position. As we see as well, Sophie being able to have a little bit of clean air, and I'm just going to spot where Charlie is. Charlie nearly on the back of Midnight here, so potentially a 4GT versus McLaren battle soon as we join back up to McManley and Pedro, still kind of side by side here. Actually, a lot closer this time, so we might see Matt go for a move here, Kirk, at the hairpin.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. Mac almost looks like he's pushing Pedro down this back straight. Is he going to pull out? He is. There he goes. He looks towards the inside on Pedro. Can he outbrake him into the hairpin? Yes, he does. But can he get it stopped and get the Ferrari turned? He's maybe going a little bit deep. Pedro can't quite straighten it out properly, or straight out to maximise traction on the exit of the corner. And McManley makes what is quite a simple move there in the end, Sarah.
Nice and easy move made just before the hairpin, and obviously the Ferrari being super fast as well, he was able to put that power down. And yeah, Pedro now behind McManley, but if Pedro can kind of stay with McManley here, it might be beneficial for him and his strategy. So we'll see if he can kind of keep to that pace of the Ferrari. But yeah, good move by Mac there. Like I said earlier, good to see him, you know, back up, moving up the grid, and also back racing. So obviously, this is first feature race back, shall we say, into the championship. So it seems to be settling back in nicely.
Yeah, you know, now once you've got it, you never really tend to lose it. Mac, as I say that, and Mac goes very wide into the corner of this corner that goes onto the back straight. Maybe feeling the pressure, or should I say lack of practice. As you say, he's been away from this game for a few months, so maybe a little bit of rust sneaking in there.
Sorry to, I know I kind of just went all out of nowhere, but I was on board with Citily, and it looked like I had a little bit of an incident with the wall, but when he rejoined the track he had a little bit of a spin and nearly caught Midnight and Charlie in the process. So maybe kind of Charlie and Midnight closing their eyes going through that tunnel there to avoid Citily, but unfortunate for Citily, but he's still up and running, still in P10, so hopefully he'll be able to kind of you know, gain those positions back slightly later in the race. But yeah, we still have Charlie and Midnight chasing each other down, as we also have the two Porsches about to battle it out as well. Fodder against Mercedes. It looks like Mercedes has just got enough of a gap in front of Fodder, although Fodder brakes a lot later, having to kind of come away from the apex slightly in order to avoid contact with Mercedes here. This could be an interesting battle brewing here, Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the battle between two Porsche drivers to see who has the superior Porsche. Obviously, Fodder on a few laps, fresher tyres. Obviously, we saw Mercedes being the first of our soft runners to pit at the end of lap 8, and Fodder ran all the way to the end of lap 11. So, got 3 lap fresher tyres in advantage to Fodder, and they're running about equal fuel loads. So really, you've got to say it's advantage Fodder for this precise moment in time. He's got the fresher tyres, so be interested to see if Mercedes, see how hard Mercedes decides to defend. Obviously, they must know that they are on slightly older tyres compared to the other Porsche driver behind. And it looks like Fodder is so confident on the brakes. Look how much he closes up in that braking zone. So it'll be interesting to see, is he going to go for a lunge? Because it obviously looks like he has the pace on Mercedes for the moment. As we see, that gap is starting to close now. He's tucked up right behind the Porsche Mercedes. Mercedes pulls about a little bit to the left, thinks about defending, but then Mercedes thinks better of it defending and doesn't defend, and Fodder sits behind for now. But it looks like Mercedes going a little bit deep at the apex of turn 1, but no move happening at the moment. So,
like a potential kind of lineup for a move, but you know, both slightly defensive from Mercedes, but also, you know, Fodder being careful as well. And it's interesting, this track, because you can kind of get up to the back of your competitor on track, but coming out of that hairpin, it all really depends on who puts down the. Oh, as it looked like, sorry, it looked like Fodder accidentally, again, similar to Mac, had a little run-in with the wall there, which has increased that gap between the two Porsches. Looks like that wall's catching quite a few people out. As we see, Mercedes picking up a half-second penalty. Obviously, he won't have to burn it this lap, but he will next time. So maybe Fodder having a free P6 shortly in the next coming lap. As Fodder also looks like he's going to go for a move down on the inside of Mercedes, but unfortunately can't put the power down, so has to give that place back to Mercedes.
I think Fodder might have been a little bit ambitious there and just lifted off to give Mercedes the position back. It's nice, respectful racing, and obviously you love to see it when the things go well. But also at the front, it looks like Katie Kai could possibly be going for an undercut on the Dark Lord. And I believe Katie Kai being the first of our medium runners to pit, far from Charlie, who pit to fix damage. Would you? I think that's right,
believe
Sarah?
so. Yep, I do believe so. You are correct there. So we shall see if he can make that undercut on the Dark Lord work. Obviously, he's got kind of a bit of a bigger challenge on his hands in case he runs into any sort of traffic. Obviously, Dark Lord having the advantage of a little bit of clean air, which might help him along the way to increase that gap to KD the Kai. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Dark Lord decides to pit. Obviously, probably within the next couple of laps or so.
Fitting this lap, Sarah. So KD Kai
must have heard us.
Kid Kai's really got to nail this lap then to see if he can make the undercut work. Obviously, he pays the price of fresh tyres is a full tank of fuel. So they kind of, you'd say they kind of even themselves out. I know from my perspective when I raced, I lost about a second from my best times as the tyres wore out, even as the car lightened. That also now promotes the returning McManley into the lead of the race, Sarah.
Does, and I'm sure he'll be very, very happy indeed at being in the lead, although he's got Pedro not too far behind, so keeping McManley on his toes. And just reporting on the Fodder and Mercedes. Fodder making that pass, obviously Mercedes had to burn that half-second penalty, so unfortunately did lose that P3 to Fodder, but still not too far behind, so I think this Porsche battle will kind of go to the end. Although it looked like Mercedes may have run a little bit wide there, but might have just got away with it. But yeah, just behind. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kirk.
I was just going to say our battle for the lead at the moment. Currently advantage Dark Lord. He chose to take a little bit less fuel just to guarantee that it would come out ahead of KD Kai.
Very clever racing. Obviously, Dark Lord knowing where KD the Kai is out on track, but obviously just goes to show you how close these two really were. Obviously the gap extended a little bit, but KD the Kai, especially in that outlap, was able to kind of close it down. We have Charlie potentially. He may look like he's going to go defensive and come back over to the right. He decides to go in the middle, but that potentially a lunge from KD the Kai, who can put down the power down earlier. Looks like Dark Lord just managed to keep that lead of KD the Kai, and Charlie backing out of this battle slightly, potentially thinking obviously not in this battle right now as he decides to pit as well.
Yeah. As we go to KD the Kai, Dark Lord defending all the way over to the left, and then pulls a little bit over to the right to open up his racing line for the first corner. And he's allowed to do that because KD Kai wasn't alongside heading into the first corner, and Dark Lord holds that position for the moment. Yes, with the likes of Pedro and McManley pitting, it promotes Fodder up into the lead of the race, Mercedes in second, and Midnight in third. Funnily enough, they all qualified on the soft tyres, so it certainly seems like their undercutting the first didn't work. So they've really got to make these tyres work for them, surely they must know that Dark Lord and KD Kai have still got their soft stint to come. So could possibly see them bring up and at them towards the end of this race. Yeah, Looking at it, it looks like everybody's starting to settle into their own little rhythm now. Closest battle is KDK and Dark Lord at the moment. But it's certainly been an exciting race so far, Sarah. After 20 laps, our pole set fodder is back in the lead, even after his pretty poor start.
And obviously that qualifying time by fodder was mind-blowing, really. You know, setting a 1:25. Obviously, it was probably the fastest quali that we saw across the two lobbies, and obviously a huge congratulations for that pole position. Not easy to do around the track when you've got the likes of, you know, the Dark Lord, Midnight, Katie the Kai, and
Mercedes off in the as we start the second sector, or towards the very end of the first sector. Looked like he may have possibly clipped the inside anti-cut curbs. It sent him into the wall. Luckily, he managed to slow down enough to avoid picking up any damage. But it certainly hasn't done his race any favours. It looks like he's lost maybe a second and a half, 2 seconds to fodder.
Good spot there. Obviously very crucial that he didn't pick up damage, so very, very lucky indeed. As you see Katie the Kai potentially going for a move on Dark Lord here. Looks like the two are going side by side. Oh, he has to let the Dark Lord back across the track. Obviously he didn't want to force Dark Lord into the wall. It was very close between the two there. Maybe you might see a lunge from Katie the Kai here, wanting that you know, that net lead back.
Yeah, his Kid Kai lunges again into the hairpin. He meets the apex. Dark Lord, he gets a big kick of oversteer as he tries to straighten up the GR. However, that allows Dark Lord to get a much straighter and better exit of the corner. He looks to go round the outside of Kid Kai, carry momentum around the outside as he ends at lap 21 and on to lap 22. Kid Kai goes defensive, pulls right up to the left, but look at the overspeed of that Supra. Can he hold it into braking? He does hold it into braking zone. Kid Kai still up his inside. Kid Kai gets it stopped, and they're still running side by side. The exit of the first corner, but the power of that Supra is just too much for Kid Kai to fight against, and the Dark Lord takes the position, or defends and holds the position for now. From losing the place at the hairpin to being able to overtake him back at turn 1. KD Kai is going to need a miracle to pass this Supra and then keep the position afterwards, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the speed, like you said, the overspeed of that Supra is insane. Obviously, these two drivers pushing it to their cars to the limit, and Dark Lord just managing to find that little bit more speed to get him back out in front of Katie the Kai. But you know, Katie the Kai still got a lot of fight left, and I'm sure he's going to take it, you know, as close as he can to the end to try and beat Dark Lord. Although you know, having your nearest battle on track being against the Supra, it's like you say, very hard to pass that car. But we've got Midnight just in front of this little pack here, and I'm sure he'll be aware of the two battling. Obviously Dark Lord and Katie the Kai there. But just having a quick flick through the grid, it looks like you say, fodder having a little bit of a kind of a, I don't know, a bit more of a chilled time, shall we say, at the moment. Obviously that first stint for him was very kind of, I guess, chaotic. Obviously when you're starting on pole, but then you kind of get engulfed turn 1, turn 2. He's got that clean air back, and I'm sure he's enjoying it for a little bit. And obviously he's got a little bit of a gap between himself and Mercedes, the fellow Porsche driver. And it looks like Pedro having a pretty good race so far in P6. He managed to jump McManley in the pits, I believe, because obviously we saw that move by McManley into the hairpin before the two had to pit. And it looks like Pedro being able to jump Mac in the pits as Mac picks up a half-second penalty. But I believe probably turn 1 or the final turn that we didn't manage to catch. But pretty much everyone else, like you say, finding their rhythm, settling into the race. Obviously, we are about halfway into the race, so there's still a lot of action to go, and I'm sure obviously a lot of action being between Katie the Kai and Dark Lord for the majority of the race, Kirk.
Yeah, and after 23 laps, they're still, Katie Kai is still all over the bumper of that Supra. It's Katie Kai's a very interesting line into the hairpin, takes a lot of go, and I thought it was a little bit of an interesting line as he unfortunately picked up a half-second penalty. All that hard work he did after his previous penalty, being able to close that gap right up to Dark Lord, is seemingly come undone again as he unfortunately picked up another penalty, which means he's going to have to do it all over again to catch up to the Dark Lord, Sarah.
I gotta say, I admit, Katie the Kai pushing that GTR to the limits, and obviously it just shows that he's pushing the car, the track to its limits. Sometimes it pays off, and sometimes obviously picking up a half-second penalty. But we've seen him close the gap before after burning a penalty. I'm sure he'll be able to do it again. He's got about half a race to, burn that penalty, make the time back up, and obviously kind of factor it into his next pit stop as well. But yeah, obviously Katie the Kai pushing the car and the track, and Dark Lord, trying his best to keep Katie the Kai behind him. As we see Katie the Kai about to burn this penalty this lap, we'll see obviously how much that gap extends to shortly, and then the mission is on for Katie the Kai to catch Dark Lord again.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that is going to be Katie the Kai's mission now. Obviously, it looks like that gap is now just gone over a second. As we see Fodder pitting for his second stop of this race at the end of lap 24. Probably just too many laps to go to make it to the end. I think even in my Viper, which was very good on the fuel and tyres around here, the most I could get out of him was about 20 or so laps. So again, maybe it's the free stop is the way to go around here, Sarah.
Potentially, and I'm sure obviously, like I said earlier, if the drivers can make it work, then obviously the fastest strategy is to their advantage. But we have got Midnight in the lead, and I'm sure while he's driving he's shouting to himself, I'm in the lead. So we'll see if he can hold it or if he has to pit shortly. But yeah, Midnight doing a pretty good job so far, keeping that McLaren nice and planted through the twisty turny bit of sector 1 through the tunnel. And but it's that thing, you're in the lead but you've got Dark Lord chasing you. And we all know what Midnight says about having the Dark Lord behind you. So, yeah, I'm sure Midnight might be feeling a little bit of pressure now as he sees that very mean-looking Supra getting closer and closer each lap. But, yeah, obviously that gap between Katie the Kai and Dark Lord is a little bit settled to about 1 to 2 seconds now. But it's that thing, Kirk. I'm sure Katie the Kai at the minute, he's not too kind of annoyed by that penalty. He can still see Dark Lord in this sight, so it's not not achievable to catch him back up again.
Yeah, you know it. I'm just thinking, what kind of pace is Katie the Kai going to have to run to be able to catch the Dark Lord? Because it looks like Dark Lord at the minute is running in the low 27s. Well, that last lap was a mid 26, which is very fast on the medium tyre, and Katie the Kai set at 26.7, so a few tenths off Dark Lord on the previous lap. But now Dark Lord's got to contend with Midnight ISO, which maybe might slow him down ever so slightly, which will allow Katie the Kai to close back up again if Katie the Kai can keep it clean and not pick up any half-second penalties.
See, that will be beneficial for him if he can, have a nice lap, as we call it, and not pick up any penalties. That was a big flick of dirt by my Midnight there to Dark Lord, trying to maybe distract him a little bit and try and slow him down. But talking about battles at the moment, we have that Porsche battle potentially reigniting here between Mercedes and Fodder. Obviously Fodder recently pitting, he's come out just but in front of Mercedes, so obviously Mercedes has now got Fodder in his sights. Will they be able to pass Fodder again? We shall see. But it's good to see these two Porsche drivers battling it out. We also, we know how fast both of them are, so it'll be exciting to see the next few laps from their perspective. But as we jump back up to the lead, we have Midnight, but we have the ever closing in Dark Lord. He's got a lot closer this lap. Midnight with his hazards on, potentially who knows what's about to happen, as we see the Dark Lord with that very fast Supra making the move for the lead again, and having Midnight just behind him. Potentially, the meat in the sandwich between himself and Katie the Kai. So potentially Midnight, not having any loyalties, he might try and keep this P2 for as long as he can, even if it means defending from Katie the Kai.
I think Midnight knew this wasn't his battle. He knows he doesn't have the outright pace. Sorry, excuse me. He knows he doesn't have the outright pace to be able to catch or defend from the Dark Lord or Katie the Kai. So it's all part of his master plan to maybe do one less stop than the other drivers and have that track position towards the end of the race, Sarah.
Although it looked like Katie the Kai having a very big snap of oversteer again coming out of that corner just before this tunnel section, so he does lose a little bit of time to Midnight. Again, Midnight kind of in no man's land between the two drivers here. Katie the Kai going for the braking move. Very late lunge.
Audacious move from miles back. He obviously doesn't want to be stuck behind Midnight ISO more than necessary, but you know, KDK is Midnight's not a lap down. He doesn't have to get out your way, and when you do audacious moves like that, maybe slightly, you maybe can burn some of that goodwill to have someone who will willfully move out of the way for you.
As Midnight looks like he moves out the way ever so slightly for KD the Kai there, like you say earlier, maybe potentially knowing that it isn't his fight right now. Potentially, obviously, after his final stint, it might be, if he can get this close to Dark Lord and KD the Kai again. But I thought Midnight might have run a little bit wide there, but he manages to keep it on track. But yeah, like you say, obviously KD the Kai going for that very late braking move on Midnight. I know if I was Midnight, I'd be closing my eyes thinking the GTR was going to go into the side of my McLaren, but they both managed to get it stopped for the hairpin. And as we see the two Porsche drivers again getting ever so close to each other, potentially Mercedes having to back out of the apex there and tuck in behind Fodder again.
It certainly seems like these two are almost in a forever battle. Looks like Fodder runs ever so slightly wide, but we can still hold the position from Mercedes. As I said, I thought he ran a bit wide, and he ran too wide apparently, as he picked up a unfortunate half-second penalty. We've seen quite a few of these this race, and they always seem to mix it up a bit, as we see Midnight ISO pitting from third position before what should be another set of the medium tyres.
Potentially, I think obviously
and with about 18 or 19 laps to go, I think this could possibly be Midnight's final pit stop for this race.
Potentially, maybe banging on another set of mediums, full tank, going right to the end, or maybe going on the mediums for now. He could go on the soft challenge, maybe for the fastest lap, or just for the fun of it, shall we say, if he finds a gap later on in his final stint. As we see Mercedes making that move on Fodder because of that penalty, but Fodder's still in the fight. Porsche is still close to each other on lap 29, as it looks like Fodder's going to go into the inside. But Mercedes capping off that apex ever so slightly for Fodder, so he's not able to put the power down as much as he wants, and he retains the lead in this little Porsche battle here.
Yeah, they certainly are still going at it, aren't they, Sarah?
They are, and it's exciting to see. Obviously, we've seen in real life, the Porsche Cup cars battling it out. Brings back fond memories of Porsches on track, which I know we both, know and love. So it's exciting to see these two Porsches battling it out. Obviously, I'm excited to see who comes out on top towards the end of the race. But in the meantime, we get a little bit of an entertaining battle between these two, and obviously very fast drivers as well. Fodder obviously was in the blue lobby last week. I've got to say, on his first red lobby event, his second ever Nighthawk racing event, he's doing a stellar job, if you agree, Kirk.
Yeah, he certainly is. Obviously, we know he didn't have the greatest of starts, dropping down to a P7 momentarily. And obviously, he's still in P7 now, but we've got drivers in front that do have to pit again, such as Pedro, who's in the pit at the minute, which will promote Mercedes, Fodder, and possibly Midnight up another position, as both Mercedes and Fodder goes past the pits while Pedro is refueling. Can Midnight ISO also overtake the Portuguese man before he comes out the pits? Yes, he can. It'll be interesting. Is Pedro taking a set of mediums to the end, or is he going into a set of softs?
Ooh, I reckon mediums.
He is going to set of mediums. 16 laps, so 16, 17 laps on the set of mediums. But I think we're seeing people's final stops here, Sarah.
Yeah, potentially, unless obviously halfway in they decide they want to go back on those soft set of tyres, maybe for a bit of comfort, maybe a bit of speed as well. As I was just having a look, it looks like the two leaders in KD the Kai and the Dark Lord have just overtaken Sitaly. Sitaly still running in P11, doing a pretty good job so far, and the Porsche battle looks a little bit closer this lap, so we'll stay on board with them to see if Fodder makes a late braking move here. Mercedes going all the way out to the right, Fodder staying behind him this lap, but it looks like Fodder got the slightly better apex. But it looks like Mercedes is able to take, that wider line and put down the power a lot earlier than obviously taking that tighter apex, Kirk.
Yeah, it's like being able to carry the momentum around the outside of the corner to straighten the car up is the better way to go. But it looks like Fodder is starting to close up on the Porsche Mercedes. Mercedes doesn't defend or doesn't pull to the inside, but it manages to brake Fodder into the first corner and again hold the momentum and keep that position from Fodder, Sarah.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm loving this battle between the two. They really kind of know each other's already. They know each other's kind of braking, where they're predicting, trying to predict where they're going to go out on track. As we see Mercedes going slightly wide, Fodder potentially thinking about going on the inside, but thinks better of it. And obviously, we've got about 15 laps to go. This is probably a battle, if this is their final stint, that we could see go literally right to the end. Obviously, it's going to be beneficial for none of the drivers here to pick up a half-second penalty, especially when you're engaging in this close of a battle. Before we get to that hairpin, have a quick flick around. We see Charlie still tucked up behind Midnight, doing a pretty good job. And just behind we have Max.
I think everybody, all of our top 5, looking at fuel-wise, will probably have to pit again. The only driver who could almost certainly make it to the end is Midnight ISO, so everybody in front of Midnight does have to pit again. But I think the likes of Dark Lord and Cade Kai are a bit out of where he can possibly challenge, but I don't see no reason why he shouldn't be able to catch, overtake Sophie, Mercedes and Fodder when they have to pit again. As again, Mercedes can just hold that position one more lap from Fodder. Although, I don't know if it's the Mercedes line in the first corner or something, but it really seems like Fodder is closing in the corners.
Like a game of cat and mouse. One sector where I think Fodder's slightly faster, and then the next sector Mercedes is just a little bit faster. So it's kind of they're very evenly matched on pace, these two Porsche drivers, and obviously that is making our job a lot harder to try and predict when they're going to make a move. But I'm sure they're enjoying it, battling it out, and doing a pretty good job. I think that's the closest battle we have out on track at the minute. As we see, obviously, Dark Lord is still behind. Cade Kai is still behind the Dark Lord. Kind of that gap is stayed about where it has after that burning of that penalty. So, obviously, in this closing stage, the mission of Cade Kai is probably going to be at all costs to try and close that gap between the Dark Lord and try and make it, the least amount of mistakes he can.
Although, interestingly enough, on the previous 2 laps, Cade Kai has been 4 tenths and 2 tenths quicker than Dark Lord, so it is starting to swing back into Cade Kai's favour, and he is starting to close up to that super again.
See, time will tell if he's able to kind of close that gap just that little bit further and potentially make a move for the lead in the closing stage of the race. As we temporarily saw a little bit of a battle between McManley and Charlie there in the 4GT. Still McManley in P8 and Charlie in P7. Obviously Charlie, like I said, having a good race after that kind of turn 1, lap 1 incident. Good to see obviously him settling back into the race. I know obviously I think a love-hate relationship with this 4GT at the minute. He loves it around certain tracks, but a track like this where it's very twisty-turny, it does prove a little bit difficult in that 4GT. But doing a pretty good job, and I'm sure obviously the speed really helps on this back straight and the start-finish straight. But the battle is a little bit closer between the two now. I'll keep on board with Max, see if he makes a very late break move here. Seems to be the corner to make the pass, Kirk, in this hairpin.
Yeah, it certainly seems like him. I'm sure, as Mac goes for it, he does maybe outbrake or maybe either Charlie brakes a little bit earlier than Mac was expecting, or Mac does brake quite late, but he does go up the inside Charlie and make that move stick from very far way back, might I say, Sarah.
It's like the battle is not over just yet. Nearly side by side. Oh, a little tap to Charlie there, which obviously will lose him a little bit of momentum. But yeah, Mclaren being able to get past Charlie, but Charlie's still staying with Mac here. If he can keep in that slipstream, as Mac brakes a lot later, going for that wide line. Charlie picking up a little bit of grass here, so it looks like the move is done and dusted by Mac, but I'm sure Charlie will try and reclaim that position in the next few laps. As just in front, they have got Midnight, who's looking to get back up onto that podium potentially. Like you say, obviously he's probably aware that some of the top 5 do have to pit, but obviously pitting probably for the soft tyres at this point. They are going to be incredibly fast.
Well, we know the soft tyres can. So our longest stint we saw on the soft tyres was 11 laps from fodder, but normally a set of soft lasts about 8 or 9 laps. So really, they don't want to be pitting until about lap 35. What was that, Sarah?
Sorry to interrupt you there. Fodder having a bit of a mistake. He has had a little bit of a half spin coming out of the hairpin, picking up front suspension and front bumper damage, pitting straight away, probably to try and capitalise on, you know, the little bit of a gap to Midnight that he has, repairing that damage and potentially going for another set of tyres here. Unfortunate for Fodder, he was having a pretty good, you know, race after those first couple of laps, but unfortunately, when he was making the move on Mercedes, a little potential, you know, flick of the accelerator sent him into a half spin.
Well, well, looking at his fuel situation before he pit, he probably did have to pit again. And it looks like Katie Kai is now up and all over the back of the Porsche of the Dark Lord. Katie Kai coming in at the end of this lap to try and undercut the Dark Lord. Katie Kai has only used mediums in this race, so he's going to have to go to the softs or the hard tyres for his final stint. But I can't help but think, is this just 1 or 2 too many laps to get the softs to the end of this race?
Going to be close. Obviously saw Fodder take it 11 laps earlier, so potentially KD Vikai seeing that and thinking that he'll try and go for it as well. So we shall see. It's on that kind of cusp where they probably can do it if they look after it, but we all know these drivers, they like to burn through some rubber, so we shall see if he can make it. He seems to be taking on quite a lot of fuel as well. 60% should be enough just to get him over the line, but that will drop him only into P2, so he doesn't lose a position, but he obviously loses a bit of time to Dark Lord. We'll obviously see if Dark Lord has to pit again.
And he did also choose to go on the soft tyre, which is again interesting choice. I think although he's going to be quick at the start of the stint, the more laps the Dark Lord, should I say, stays out, the more the tyre advantage would go to his favour towards the end of the race.
Yeah, I agree there.
I don't know how much track position is worth. Is it worth it to you, Sarah? As we do see Dark Lord coming in this lap.
It's that thing, track position is important, but it's that thing that if you feel that you can go that little bit faster, potentially set the fastest lap, then, you know, like yourself, I don't want to spoil any blue lobby, it's that thing that I think drivers like to risk it, as we see the blue flags going up for Phil. Being in the fellow GTR, will Phil let KD the Kai through, or will he tow him on this start-finish straight? We shall see. Obviously, blue flags for Phil here. We'll see if he potentially moves out of the way of KD the Kai going to the first corner, or proves it a little bit challenging. He just put the indicator on, although the indicator is onto the left, but KD the Kai does go to the left. Phil staying on the right and letting KD the Kai through.
Yeah, it looks like Phil probably lifted off a little bit before the start of the corner, as it looks like Dark Lord is out in second. I'm not sure whether he took just a bit too more fuel than Keegan Kai, or whether that's how much time he did lose on the old set of soft tyres. So at the moment, it seems like Dark Lord has 1 lap fresher softs than Kia Kai, which I'm not sure how much of an advantage that will be, Sarah.
I don't know, it'll probably be that final lap or so that we'll see who has the advantage with that tyre call. And we haven't mentioned her so far, which I do apologise, but Sophie having a little bit of a race of her own at the moment, doing pretty well in P8, obviously making some moves up in some strategy calls, so really good from Sophie in that Ferrari. Maybe not, a preferred track, but she seems to be, well, Fodder's not too far behind, but she seems to be doing pretty well, just having a nice chilled race around Deep Forest in the very lovely looking Ferrari 458, and we may potentially see Fodder obviously having to pit in the last few laps for another set and repairing that damage. Maybe a little bit of a battle between the Porsche and Ferrari coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, interestingly enough, it seems like Sophie is actually overcut the Fodder in the pits. So as we know, Fodder had to repair a bit of damage from when he half spun at the hairpin, and that gave enough advantage to Sophie to be able to overcut Fodder, which is interesting enough. But not only she got fresher tyres, she's got fresh tyres, a little bit more fuel, but she also has that valuable track position around here, which we know is incredibly difficult to overtake someone around here unless you are really, really brave on the brakes, which we know Fodder can be.
It's all going to be in that hairpin. I think obviously we know how late Fodder can brake. We've seen it time and time again during this race, so I'm sure obviously Sophie may be unaware of how late Fodder is willing to brake, but in the next few laps I'm sure that Fodder will try and make a move, and we all know Sophie is kind of pretty good at defending, so I'm sure we'll see her defending that P7, picking up obviously a big haul of points if she finishes in that position, as well as we see Phil coming into the pits. I saw Charlie coming out of the pits, so again obviously trying to set that last stint, maybe on the trying to set a fastest lap or a personal best, as we see Citily moving out of the way for the Midnight and McManley, as this battle maybe potentially towards the end might heaten up, as we have the Nighthawk admin in Mac chasing down co-founder Midnight. A interesting battle. Mercedes still in P3, but going back up to the lead, obviously Dark Lord on the back foot here, like you mentioned, obviously track position. He is technically in second. Katie the Kai obviously in that all-important first. It will be Dark Lord that potentially might have to make a move here if he wants to win it, Kirk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he's certainly still got plenty of laps to do. He's got 7 laps, including this one left. He seems to have the slight advantage at the minute. It was about 2.5 tenths quicker than Katie the Kai on the previous lap, setting the fastest lap of the race session so far, being a 25.3. It doesn't quite improve this lap, taking a 25.7, and losing about 3 thousandths of a second to Katie Kai. It certainly seems like at the moment it seems advantage Katie Kai, but we know that Katie Kai pitted a lap earlier than Louis, so his soft tyres are going to be crying towards the end of this race, Sarah, more so than Louis.
Yeah, and I'm sure obviously Katie Kai, being aware of that, he'll be trying his ever so bestest to look after those tyres. A very difficult task indeed for that GTR. We know it seems to be quite cuts through that rubber quite quickly. But obviously, the speed of that Supra as well, I'm sure Katie the Car obviously feeling the pressure a little bit. He knows how fast that Supra is on the straight line. But going back to the P6 battle, Fodder seems to have closed that gap a little bit to Sophie here. So maybe a move potentially brewing in the next lap or so. And I haven't mentioned him for quite a while, but we have Pedro sitting in P5 after all those pit stops, managing to find and slot himself into P5, a good position, and obviously picking up a big haul of points if he finishes here. And Midnight picking up a half-second penalty here. Obviously, he won't burn it this lap, but if Matt can keep with him, potentially a podium spot for the returning Matt.
Yeah, it would be a hell of a return, wouldn't it, for Matt to finish on the podium after being running so long away. But it's also interesting to note about Pedro. While Pedro's on the medium tyre, he's being hunted by the two drivers behind on the softer tyre, with Sophie and the Fodder. Fodder absolutely outbrakes himself massively as he sends one up the inside of Sophie. That Porsche, obviously, you know how to get that Porsche on the traction, so he doesn't end up losing all that much off the exit of the corner, even though he did go super deep into the hairpin. Sophie is looking at defending into the first corner. She is pulled all the way over to the left-hand side, forcing Fodder to go around the outside into the first corner. Can he dupe 33 into braking too late for the first corner? No, he can't, and Sophie holds that position for now.
Very scary moment there. I thought maybe potentially those two coming together at the hairpin, but they both managed to survive, which I'm grateful for. But it looks like it'll be round 2 at the hairpin shortly if Sophie can keep defending from Fodder, as we see obviously Midnight coming to that tunnel section where he's unfortunately going to have to burn that penalty. But will he close? Obviously he might just fall back behind Mac here, hopefully not too far back. As he stays to the right, Mac on the left, the other way around. I don't know my left and right, so obviously at 23. But McLaren making that move on Midnight. Midnight obviously wanting probably that P3, so I'm sure this battle is not over just yet, as we are just about to go on to lap 42. Oh, Fodder making a big mistake there, maybe potentially being caught out by Sophie's braking, and that loses him quite a lot of track. A lot of time on the track, and potentially bringing him back into the clutches of Mercedes here.
Well, Mercedes is on a fresh set of soft tyres, so if Mercedes does catch Fodder, you've got to think it's only going to be a very simple move to be able to overtake him, as it looks like Manley did get past Midnight ISO in the end. I'm not sure if you saw it or not, Sarah.
Yeah, it was because of the penalty, unfortunately. Midnight having to burn a penalty, a half-second penalty. Mac breezing past, and unfortunately Midnight having to tuck in just behind. But like I say, obviously Midnight trying his best to keep with Mac and try and get back on the podium here. As we see as well, obviously Sophie extending that gap to Fodder here. And potentially, obviously we've only got 4 laps to go. We may see a move from Sophie on Pedro here. If she can close that gap and get obviously closer to the rear of Pedro, potentially in the last few laps or so, we may see a move here. Obviously Pedro will be aware of that gap between the two coming down and down, as we see behind obviously Mercedes. Fodder in a little bit of no man's land between Sophie and Mercedes here at the moment. But anything catching your eye on, obviously, as we go on to lap 43, 3 laps to go, Kirk?
Nothing at the minute. It seems like everybody is kind of settled in now. It looks like we right in a minute. It's just our little battle for the lead between KDK and the Dark Lord, and a battle for P3 between Mac Manley and Midnight ISO. Maybe the two soft runners hunting Pedro down for P5. We say not a lot going on, but it seems like there's quite a few battles happening. Who would have thought after 43 laps of racing we're still going to have so many battles for podium positions? I couldn't tell you who's going to finish on the podium, whether it be Mac or Midnight, or who's even going to finish in 5th position between Pedro, Sophie and Fodder. And even Mercedes, now that you're at it, because Mercedes is right up behind Fodder, and surely looking at the state of Fodder's tyres, it's only be a matter of time before Mercedes manages to overtake him.
So it looked like Fodder drifting out slightly to the right. Obviously Mercedes trying to capitalise that. We may see maybe Mercedes this time going for that very late braking move, trying to do a Fodder trick here as he brakes slightly later, goes to the inside line, doesn't manage to get to the apex. Fodder clipping that apex, It's all about who can put the power down. It looks like a pretty much match, but Mercedes slightly pulling in front of Fodder here. So Fodder unfortunately will have to try and make that move done again into turn 1. But that was quite a duel there we had, Kirk.
Yeah, it certainly was. Fodder for the outbreak himself just slightly, which we've seen a few times this race. He likes to go very deep into a corner and look for that switchback line, but it looks like there's nothing he can do. His tyres are a bit too worn now, and Mercedes ends up making that move look quite simple in the end.
I don't think we've caught it, but I think a potential mistake from KD the Kai. I've just seen how far back KD the Kai is, and he's got front damage, Kirk. Potentially that might be, I don't know, that might have just given the win back to Dark Lord here. Obviously we've got 2 laps to go. Very unfortunate for KD the Kai.
I don't think KD the Kai's got enough time for the drivers behind to be able to pit for a fresh set of softs. But I think that's what he's doing. He's picked up a half-second penalty on the exit of the hairpin. KD the Kai had his pit in again for a set of fresh softs. So it looks like it's all to fight for now. It should have been a battle for P3. It's now turning into a battle for P2 as McMahon leads Midnight ISO. Leads Midnight ISO. This battle for P2 now, Sarah.
It does indeed.
It also promotes Pedro up into P4. Pedro got a defend from Sophie, shall I say, in that tyre. As we see yellow flags out. And who's that spinning on the exit? And Phil is spinning on the exit of turn 1, which is going to bring everything right back up together. Oh my goodness, Sarah. So I think it's all about to kick off, Sarah, because Phil isn't going the quickest, and we've got 3 drivers battling, well, 4 drivers battling for P4 here.
Yeah, I'm sure Phil, obviously looking behind, he's probably maybe internally screaming here, obviously having to potentially move out of the way. But we saw a very late break-in move by Sophie there into turn 1 of the penultimate lap, and obviously making her way up to P4. Pedro's still in P5, but like you say, we've still got Mercedes and Fodder not too far behind. So this little battle of 4 will probably go right until the end, last corner, as we see obviously blue flagged for Phil. Although it looks like Sophie's not tucked into that slipstream of the GTR, which I'm sure she's, trying to get that to pull her along and maybe extend that gap to Pedro. As we see Mercedes picking up a half-second penalty too.
I'm not sure what Phil's doing at this last moment in time. Obviously, if he's been giving blue flags for quite a while now, and he hasn't pulled out the way for the faster drivers approaching.
He goes to the left.
Yeah, but he doesn't lift off or anything. With that Sophie pass, this is like contact between Phil and Pedro there. As he hits Fodder as well.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah, very unfortunate. It was like Pedro unfortunately loser there in that situation. But it leaves Sophie up in 4th, Mercedes in P5th, Fodder in 6th with a bit of front end damage, Pedro in 7th, and Phil with front end and front left damage, losing the place to Sitley. Sitley gets all sorts of sideways as a mini celebration.
Mini celebration by Dark Lord, knowing that he's obviously got that gap. Obviously, it don't showboat too much Dark Lord, because potentially if you crash into the wall. But obviously Dark Lord picking up the win there. It looks like Mac's going to pick up P2. A nice little podium on his return of the Mac, as we like to say. And Midnight looking to fulfill that podium as well with a P3.
Yeah. Unfortunately, just not quite had enough pace in the end there to take that position off Mac in the closing few laps. But I'm sure Mac and Midnight were very happy with them finishing the positions. Sophie takes 4th, Mercedes takes P5, Fodder takes 6th as he spins across the line, and Pedro in 7th after that unfortunate incident with Phil on the final lap. It looks like Sitley and Phil are our last of our 2 lap well, finish a lap early. So unfortunately let down. And the last finisher on the lead lap is Charlie. With unfortunately Katie Cloud looking like retiring to the pits at the end of lap 43, Sarah.
Yeah, very obviously unfortunate for Katie the Kai there. He looked like he was potentially on for the win. Or if not, a very nice P2 after battling all race long with Dark Lord. So obviously it's sad to see that he retired. But it's unfortunate. We know how it is when you're battling for the lead and you have an incident. It can really kind of affect, the race itself. So I can understand why Katie the Kai is retired there. But we all know how fast he is. I'm sure he'll bounce back for the next race, obviously, which is the reverse layout of this track. So I'm obviously wishing that Katie the Kai next time out is able to get that win that he dearly wants. But what did you think of that race, Coke? Obviously, it brought entertainment right till the bitter end. Maybe potentially a little bit of miscommunication from Phil and Pedro there, which obviously resulted in that incident and Pedro dropping a few positions. But all in all, what did you think of it, Coke?
Yeah, it was a cracker of a race, wasn't it? Even all the way through it. Lots of overtakes, lots of thrills and spills, like usual. I couldn't believe it. If you told me at the start of this race, by the end of lap 46, we'd see all sorts of battles throughout the field, with Mac and Midnight fighting over the podium position between themselves, and then heading into 3 laps to go, we had 4 drivers fighting over P4. I wouldn't believe it, but a cracker of a race. And if it's anything like, if next week's race is half as good as this one, we're in for another absolute stonker of a race.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Like you say, people that maybe potentially, like you say, Midnight Mac, obviously, no, I don't want to say, they did call the strategy right, but unfortunately, obviously, with Katie the Car retiring, it does give them a free kind of tiny little boost up. But, that's not to kind of rain on their parade. A P2, especially on Mac's return to the game, where he's not had the chance to play it that much, is phenomenal. And we all know that Midnight seems to be around the podium in this first half of the season. So carrying the Nighthawk CEO, should I say. It's so good to see him on the podium again. And Sophie, obviously, that first kind of half of the race, she was having I don't want to say a chill time, because I know all the drivers, when you're racing, we don't really have chill times, we're always pushing it. But she seemed to be kind of on the track on her own for quite a while until that last stint, and really able to capitalise, finishing P4. But yeah, all in all, I think it's obviously it just goes to show not to give up until the end, because obviously maybe Sophie, after that first lap or so, maybe potentially thought that she was going to finish slightly further down, as well as obviously Charlie as well, and Fodder. So yeah, it just goes to show that anything can happen during these races. So impressed and proud of all the drivers. But talking about the drivers, who is your driver of the day, Kirk?
I think it's got to go to McManley. Obviously on his return to the league, after obviously being very busy with real life commitments, he has drove an absolutely stonking race. Well, I said that quite a few times, but he drove a fantastic race today. They finished second as well, although maybe quite a ways behind Louis, or Dark Lord. I think he's done very well. I think he is my driver of the day, Sarah.
Well, I'm going to agree with that as well. But I'm thinking either Midnight or Dark Lord as well. Obviously, Midnight finishing on the sprint race podium as well, so double podium for him. Hard to call. I think I'm going to give it to Midnight for the double podium, as well as obviously McManley for his good return back. And but again, nothing to short of impressive by the Dark Lord there. Pretty much all feature race long. He really showed, his some defensive, some attacking. But all in all, just able to keep us, cool, calm and collected and pick up that win. Another one to add to his tally. And let's see if we can replicate it next week. So obviously next week we are doing the reverse layout of Deep Forest. So we stay here on this track, but we'll see how the drivers obviously adjust to driving it the other way around. It is obviously a lot more difficult, and you probably won't be able to go as fast through some of the sections. But it's going to be interesting, don't you think, Kirk?
Yeah, I think you know, this track is a whole different can of worms in reverse. Where from what I've seen, a lot more emphasis on being gentle on the throttle and steering, because once the tyres start wearing, it is so easy to put on the throttle just a little bit too much and have a little snap of oversteer, which could obviously upset the car and send you into a spin or a half spin. But also, in reverse, a lot more of the traction zones have got elevation change, which also can lead to upsetting the rear of the car. So I think next week you can almost say it's going to be a race of attrition almost.
I think that's a good word to end it on as well. I definitely agree. It's going to be kind of who can push it again, who can look after their tyres and their fuel, and who can capitalise on having a good track position. But I'm going to use your word, Kirk. We've had a stonker of a round 5 at Deep Forest, and looking forward to round 6. But thank you for joining me in the commentary again, Kirk. Always a privilege to work alongside you. And obviously wishing all the drivers good luck in round 6, and we shall see you shortly for some more commentary.
Yeah, I'll see what you bring on next week, and I'm sure we're going to have another great race next week. So after the race is finished, we said so we're going to have a look back, see what happened with Katie Kai. It was like going on to lap 44, Katie Kai feeling the pressure from Louis of being on a lap fresher softs. As Katie Kai runs towards the end of this first sector, it looks like he gets just a little bit too much on the inside of the anti-cut curbs, and touches too much of the grass on the entry to the tunnel, and goes and hits the wall and picks up front end damage, and somehow spinning after he'd gone into the wall as well, and obviously picking up front end damage. That's what we said. I think we felt early on, Sarah, that he had possibly pitted a lap too early to go onto a set of soft tyres, and really it showed there when you push as hard as that on tyres that are getting very second hand, it's quite simple to make mistakes there, and that's obviously unfortunately what happened to Katie Kai. A mix of just being a bit ambitious with track limits, getting some dirty tyres, and too aggressive on the throttle, which caused him to spin in the end, unfortunately.
Yeah, very unfortunate. Not what you want to see obviously this far into the race. He had a pretty stellar race up until this point. Obviously we saw them, Dark Lord and Katie Kai, battling it pretty much the whole race long. So sometimes when you're battling between another driver, one has to lose and one has to win, and unfortunately this week Katie Kai coming off slightly worse off with that damage, but I'm sure we'll see him bounce back next week. But Dark Lord winning the battle this time between the two.
Winning the battle, but maybe not winning the war, but I'm pretty sure he's winning the war moment in time.
But yeah, he's pretty far up the leaderboard as our Dark Lord, so I'm sure obviously extending his lead again here tonight. But it's interesting to see obviously those two battling it, obviously for the majority of the race, and then provided us with a lot of action. Like I say, obviously very unfortunate for Katie Kai, but sometimes these things happens obviously across the grid, but he'll bounce back, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be eager to be on next week as well.
Qualifying was good. Nice to help out a fellow dad bod out too. Sprint race was going okay, then unfortunately made slight contact with fodder, which dropped us back. but we worked together to gain time back and made up a few positions. Feature race made a cracking start to get to P1 after turn 1. Then it was just a constant, brilliant battle with Kai all the way through the race. He got the jump after the seconds pit stop, but managed to close the gap down. And he made the mistake, which gave me the win. So overall, was a good event.
I'm really happy with the sprint race getting up to P3. And in the feature, I'll take P5 as there are any penalties in front of myself. It was better than expected in the 911.
Well, I have to say, I absolutely adored the racing at Deep Forest. It was a track that seemed to just give so much action. And from my perspective, I really enjoyed the racing alongside. Actually, first I've got to give Louis, our Dart Lord, a massive thank you for helping during qualifying. I may have stole a slipstream off him and helped me get up to P2 for the starting grid, which was almost thrown away in the feature race when both myself and Fodder jumped the start and got swallowed by the pack, so that led for a very interesting first corner there. But going back to the sprint briefly, that was one hell of a few laps. Had to hold off Mercedes once I got into P2 and was just focusing on taking slingshots out of corners to try and get the highest top speed down the straight, because it's one aspect to the Mclaren and the 911 that isn't too far similar from each other, but ultimately we're both very easily passed in a straight line. So I was just trying to make sure I maximise my own top speed and hold off Mercedes to the end, which was, I think, very luckily managed, because it was a great drive from Mercedes and the chasing pack behind. And in the feature race, went for an alternate strategy, started on the soft tyre and then went double mediums to the end. Absolutely adored the race. It was a bit of a slow burn actually from my perspective, but it all came together at the end, seeing everyone fighting directly behind. It was a one where I think I got the maximum out of myself. I could not have expected any more or any better. Unfortunate from Kai not to finish the race in the end with the incident, but we'll take an extra couple of points. It finished P3. Mac just stealing that P2 from me towards the end. It's one of those, I hadn't picked up a penalty all qualifying, all practice, all sprint, and then picked up a penalty a couple of laps to the end and made it easy for Mac. But congratulations to him after that early set of incidents, and he recovered to take a well-earned P2. So what can I say, brilliant racing from everyone. It was just so clean as well out there. So looking forward to the next one at the same track in reverse next week.